In my book, The Great Facade, I speak of what I call the Benedictine respite from the crisis. With a few simple acts of governance, Benedict XVI triggered what promised to be a full-on restoration of the church. There was, of course, Summorum Pontificum, in which he released the Latin Mass from its absurd Babylonian captivity for 40 years. He corrected the major mistranslations in the Novus Ordo liturgy, and he lifted the excommunications of the Society of St. Pius X bishops. So the fever was reducing. But then came March 12th, 2013, and Benedict fled in fear of the wolves. And what we got in his place was Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Now, we're all familiar with the concept of a rebound infection. So I look at the pontificate of Benedict as an incomplete treatment with an antibiotic. It was cut off before it was completed. And the rebound infection is worse than the original condition. And that's what this man, Bergoglio, represents. For the first time, and I'm going to say something very dramatic here, but I think we all believe it, so why not say it openly? For the first time in church history, we have a pope who is quite literally a declared enemy of Roman Catholicism. He is the literal embodiment of the liturgical, doctrinal, and moral crisis I just sketched very briefly, all rolled into one supremely arrogant, narrow-minded, intolerant, and vindictive individual who, in an epochal calamity, has ascended to the chair of Peter. Now, is it a coincidence, as my friend John Rao has pointed out, that Bergoglio rhymes with the Italian word for pride, orgoglio? I don't think it is. From the moment he occupied the papacy, Bergoglio has been conducting an attack on liturgy, on doctrine, and on morals, and even the very structure of the church. In other words, an attack on our religion directed from the very chair of Peter. Now, I do not judge his internal disposition. I want to say that up front. I do not accuse him of subjective malice. He says many malicious things. We can say the things that he says that are malicious are in fact malicious. But in terms of his overall intent, do I say he's a malicious, knowing enemy of the faith sent by the devil himself to destroy the church? No, I cannot say that. I cannot judge his internal disposition. The charitable explanation is that he is a deluded neo-modernist visionary who actually thinks he's orthodox. Let's go with that. And so with this I say, I am not claiming that the See of Peter is vacant. I believe that the whole sedevacantist enterprise is a total waste of time. First of all, in order to convict the Pope of heresy, he needs the same thing that any one of us would get, a process in which we would be called upon to retract, and failing to retract, the bull of excommunication would be issued. The problem is no one can conduct such a process with a pope because no one may judge the first see. So I do not say that he has lost his seat. I do not say that the See of Peter is vacant. I say we have a pope who is, paradoxically enough, a validly elected anti-pope. Make of it what you will. A pope for the final phase of the ecclesial crisis in which the papacy itself accelerates what Cardinal Ratzinger rightly identified as that continuing process of decay that has gone on largely on the basis of appeals to the council, to which Bergoglio constantly appeals. But the situation he has created goes far beyond anything the Second Vatican Council had to say. In fact, the situation he has created is so dire that we adhere to more of the Second Vatican Council than he does, to the extent that it teaches things that are orthodox and repeats them, however verbosely. In other words, I maintain that we have to be witnessing the final unfolding of the third secret of Fatima. Now, in that context, recall what Cardinal Chiappi, theologian to successive popes, said in his famous letter to Professor Baumgartner, quote, "In the third secret, it is predicted, among other things, that the great apostasy in the church will begin at the top, Recall also Father Schweigel's testimony. He was sent to interrogate Sister Lucia by Pope Pius XII in 1952. And he wrote to one of his colleagues, "I cannot reveal anything of what I learned at Fatima concerning the third secret, but I can say that it has two parts. One concerns the Pope. The other, logically, although I must say nothing, would have to be the continuation of the words, 'In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved,' to which Sister Lucia added the famous etc." So he says there is a part of this secret that obviously talks about the dogma of the faith being lost or compromised in places beyond the nation of Portugal. Now, speaking of Pius XII, you may have heard this quote before, but it needs to be repeated today. When he was Cardinal Pacelli in 1931, here is what he said about the Message of Fatima as it relates to our situation today. "I am worried by the Blessed Virgin's messages to little Lucia of Fatima. This persistence of Mary about the dangers which menace the Church is a divine warning against the suicide that would be represented by altering the faith in her liturgy, her theology, and her soul." End quote. Now, with Bergoglio, whatever his subjective disposition, it seems obvious that he is attempting precisely that form of ecclesial suicide, and that we have thus reached the climax of what the third secret foretells. He is literally attempting to alter the faith in her liturgy, her theology, and her soul, which is the template for the rest of this talk.